lottery winner goes broke within 5 years. A self-made millionaire loses everything in a market crash and rebuilds it all within 3. Same money, same economy, completely different outcomes. Why? Because what you become determines what you keep. Jim Rohn understood this better than anyone alive. He was a broke 25-year-old farm kid from Idaho who couldn't pay his bills, until one mentor showed him a truth so simple it sounds like a joke, and so powerful it built a $400 million legacy. Become more than you get. Today, we're going to dismantle the biggest lie modern culture ever sold you, the lie that says success is about what you acquire. Because the ancient philosophers knew what every modern success guru forgot, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why everything you've been chasing has been chasing the wrong thing. The great lie. Here's how the lie works. From the moment you're born, the world hands you a scoreboard. Get the degree, get the job, get the house, get the car, get the relationship. Every milestone is framed as an acquisition. You don't become educated, you get a diploma. You don't become skilled, you get a position. You don't become loving, you get a partner. Success is not to be pursued. It is to be attracted by the person you become. And here's what's terrifying about this. Most people spend their entire lives climbing a ladder only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. They hit every target society gave them and still feel empty. Because acquisition without transformation is a prison disguised as freedom. Think about it. How many people do you know who have everything on paper and nothing inside? The house, the title, the salary, and a quiet desperation they can't explain. Jim Rohn saw this pattern everywhere, and he traced it back to one catastrophic misunderstanding about what success actually is. But to understand his answer, we need to understand where he started. Rohn's rock bottom. Jim Rohn was 25 years old. He had a young family, a dead-end job, and exactly $0 in savings. One day a Girl Scout knocked on his door selling cookies. He wanted to buy them, $2. He didn't have $2. He lied and told her he'd already bought some. When that little girl walked away, Rohn stood in his doorway and something broke inside him. Enough. Not because of the cookies, because he realized he'd been lying to himself for years, telling himself things would get better, telling himself the economy was bad, the government was wrong, his boss was unfair. As Rohn later said, I was looking for success outside of myself, when all along the problem was inside. That moment of brutal honesty became the turning point. Shortly after, he met a man named Earl Schoaf, a wealthy entrepreneur who would become his mentor, and what Schoaf told him demolished everything Rohn believed about money, success, and life itself. Mentor Truth Awakening. What Schoaf revealed next is something most people never hear, and it changes everything. The Schoaf lesson. Earl Schoaf sat Jim Rohn down and said something that sounds almost absurd in its simplicity. He said, Jim, if you want to have more, you have to become more, not work more, not hustle more, not scheme more, become more. Income rarely exceeds personal development. Rohn was confused at first. Become what? Schoaf explained. Your income, your relationships, your health, your influence, none of these can permanently exceed the level of person you've developed into. You can temporarily get things you haven't earned through luck or timing, but you cannot keep them. This is why lottery winners go bankrupt. They got the money, but they didn't become the kind of person who can manage wealth. The money didn't change them, so reality corrected itself. Now, if this ancient truth is making you rethink your own approach to success, hit like and subscribe to keep unlocking wisdom that transforms. Because Schoaf wasn't just talking about money. He was describing a universal law, and it connects directly to something the greatest philosophers in history understood thousands of years ago. Ancient proof. Rohn didn't know it at the time, but Schoaf was echoing something Aristotle wrote 2,300 years ago. Aristotle didn't say happiness comes from getting things. He said happiness, what he called eudaimonia, comes from the activity of the soul in accordance with virtue. In plain language, you become happy by becoming a better person, not by collecting better things. The Stoics took this even further. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, wrote to his friend Lucilius, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it." Waste it how? By pursuing possessions instead of character, by chasing reputation instead of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on earth as Emperor of Rome, spent his private hours writing in a journal about self-improvement, not conquest. Character over conquest. These men had everything the world could offer, and they all arrived at the same conclusion Rohn did in that doorway. The external world cannot exceed the internal one. But here's where it gets really interesting, because there's a mechanism behind this truth that science is only now beginning to understand. The thermostat. Think of your self-image as a thermostat, not a thermometer that simply reads the temperature, but a thermostat that controls it. If your internal thermostat is set to 65 degrees, you can crank the heat all you want. The thermostat will bring it back down. Your external reality will always snap back to match your internal identity. This is why people who lose weight without changing their identity gain it back. Why people who get promotions without growing into them get fired. Why relationships built on attraction alone collapse when attraction fades. 1. Lottery winners return to poverty. 2. Crash dieters regain the weight. 3. Promoted employees get demoted. 4. Inherited wealth disappears in a generation. Rohn explained it like this. He said, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. For things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. He wasn't being motivational. He was describing thermodynamics of the soul. And once you understand this, a terrifying question emerges, one that most people spend their whole life avoiding. The hard question. The question is this: who are you becoming? Not what are you getting, not what are you achieving. Who are you becoming in the process? Most people never ask this because the answer terrifies them. Because if you look honestly at your daily habits, your daily choices, your daily thoughts, they paint a portrait of who you're becoming. And for most people, that portrait hasn't changed in years. They're becoming the same person they were yesterday, and the day before, and the year before that. Rohn said something brutal about this. He said, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. This is the real crisis of modern life, not poverty, not failure, but the slow, invisible process of becoming nothing in particular, of drifting through years without any deliberate transformation. The ancient Greeks had a word for it. They called it akrasia, knowing what you should do and not doing it. Akrasia, drift, decay. But Rohn didn't just diagnose the disease, he prescribed the cure, and it begins with the most counterintuitive investment you'll ever make. The becoming path. Rohn's prescription was radical in its simplicity. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Read the books, attend the seminars, find the mentors, journal, reflect, grow. He said if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune. But it's not about the fortune. That's the trap people fall into again. It's about who you had to become to build the fortune. The discipline you develop, the patience you cultivate, the wisdom you earn through failure after failure after failure. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi death camps, arrived at the same truth from the opposite direction. He watched men with everything, health, strength, status, crumble in the camps, while others with nothing but inner conviction survived. As Frankl wrote, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. What you become can never be taken from you. What you get can always be taken, and that distinction is the difference between a life built on sand and a life built on stone. But there's one more piece to this puzzle, the piece that explains why the process itself is the reward. Process as reward. Here's what nobody tells you about becoming. The struggle itself is where the transformation happens. Rohn understood that the goal isn't really the point. The goal is just a target that forces you to grow. Set a goal to make $1 million, not because you need $1 million, but because of who you'll become in the process. The discipline, the creativity, the resilience, the communication skills, the emotional intelligence. Discipline, resilience, wisdom. Michelangelo didn't become a genius and then carve David. He became a genius through the process of carving David. Every chisel strike was a moment of becoming. Every mistake was a lesson absorbed into his hands. The sculptor and the sculpture were being created simultaneously. Nietzsche saw this too. He wrote that a human being is something that must be overcome, not once, continuously. The becoming never stops. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And the deepest why of all is this: you are becoming something. The only question is whether you're doing it on purpose or by accident, and that question leads us to the most practical truth Jim Rohn ever taught. Daily disciplines. Rohn boiled all of this down to something he called the daily disciplines. Small, seemingly insignificant actions performed consistently over time. He said, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines, practiced every day. Read 10 pages of a good book. That's 3,600 pages a year. That's roughly 20 books that reshape how you think. Write in your journal, reflect on your day, not to record what happened, but to process who you're becoming through what happened. The small daily choices determine the person you become. Have one meaningful conversation instead of scrolling for an hour. Exercise your body so your mind has a strong vessel to operate from. 1. Read 10 pages daily. 2. Write and reflect each night. 3. Replace 1 hour of scrolling with learning. 4. Move your body every single day. These sound simple, almost embarrassingly simple, and that's exactly why most people ignore them, because we've been conditioned to believe transformation requires dramatic action. But Rohn knew the truth. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. The person who reads 10 pages today looks identical to the person who watched television instead. But compound those choices over 5 years, and you're looking at two completely different human beings. Compound growth daily. And this brings us to the ultimate lesson, the one that ties everything together. The real wealth. Jim Rohn started as a broke kid who couldn't buy $2 cookies. He ended as a man who influenced Tony Robbins, who shaped entire industries, who spoke to millions. But here's what he said about all of it. I became a millionaire not for the $1 million, but for the person I had to become. The money was a side effect. The real wealth was the transformation. The kid who stood in that doorway lying to a Girl Scout had to die so that the philosopher, the speaker, the mentor could be born. Every version of you that got what it wanted had to first become someone worthy of having it. This is the universal truth that connects Jim Rohn to Aristotle, Viktor Frankl to Marcus Aurelius, the lottery winner who goes broke to the self-made man who rebuilds from ashes. The external world is a mirror. It can only reflect what you've become on the inside. Polish the mirror all you want. If the reflection hasn't changed, nothing has changed. But become more, and the mirror has no choice but to show you something magnificent. So let me ask you something. When you look at your life right now, what are you becoming? Not what are you getting, not what's in your bank account or on your resume. Who are you in the process of becoming? Becoming matters most. Because Jim Rohn's greatest gift wasn't motivation. It was a mirror. He held it up and said, the reason you don't have what you want is because you haven't yet become the person who can have it. And the beautiful part, the part that should fill you with fire, is that becoming is available to everyone, right now, today. With the next book you read, the next conversation you have, the next choice you make. Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. The ancient philosophers knew it. The Stoics practiced it. Frankl proved it in the death camps, and Rohn made it so simple that a broke kid from Idaho could understand it. If you made it this far, comment becoming to prove you understand that the real treasure was never the destination, it was the transformation along the way. The wisdom of the ages is yours. Use it well. If this unlocked something in you, subscribe for more. The vault has more wisdom waiting.